Tired of Trump news? Let's do something different. Both the news of what he's doing now, which a lot of things he won't be able to get away with, and we know it, and of how long until he's gone. Again, that's fake news until it happens. So, aside from that world, let's talk about something different, shall we? Let's. Okay, Mike here. Um, so I just read an article about where a physicist asked the question of answered a student question. What's below us right now, and he then gave us an answer, a bunch of stuff about, what does it mean to be above and below us, in terms of what our axis of rotation is, and how that's a a relative question, but that didn't give any answers. It's like, okay, given that circumstance, what are your assumptions and what's there? So I'm gonna ask the question somewhat different ways and see if I can do it in 15 minutes. Um, okay, what's above and below the Earth's axis is irrelevant because it spins and does all that kind of thing. The North Star. That we know, and that moves, and so we know that, and there's nothing below us that we can see. Okay, so yeah, above's easy. It's the North Star for now. Okay, let's break it down. Let's make astronomy useful rather than just it's by its own. Because astronomers will like say, well, we'll see this at this point and all that. Okay, let's give a few parameters for discussions on what we will see and what we will experience. Couple of timelines first. One timeline is until the Earth is swallowed up. That's between now and then. What will we see, and what will actually come close, and eventually that becomes those things become could become the same thing if we come close, if we get close to anything. So so it's then let's say we talk about ascension. Ascension being at what point, well, let's first, uninhabitability. At what point will we have to be gone? Before the sun expands and bubbles up and all that, or explodes. At what point must we be either elsewhere or assume that that's the uninhabitability of the Earth? And I know that's got several interesting questions to deal with. It could become uninhabitable next Tuesday if we get hit by something we didn't know was coming. But assume, instant tragedy doesn't happen. How far in the future is that? And, and that's, and then ascension is when will we be able to assume we can eventually have a spiritual dimension that can go places. So then at that point we can assume that C is infinite rather than C is that C is the fixed constant. Assume instantaneous travel, because why not? In other words, there's two ways to look at what's relative, or what time and space in the universe. One is, what will we see in the sky? What's the light show going to look like between now and whatever fixed time you have in the future? That where you want to stop the tape. Let's just say we say it because we want to stop the tape. Okay. You could also say until Sagittarius A expands and eats a sol, or you can even say, okay, when will what was Sagittarius A gets to the great attractor, if it does. Assume expansion and no expansion. If you assume expansion, then we'll never get there. Okay, so then fine. Then then you can assume just that that Sagittarius A absorbs the Milky Way. Eventually, it'll happen. That's probably the way the Milky Way goes out. Or assume the collision with Andromeda. That's an interesting one. From now until we collide with Andromeda in a meaningful way, in a way that's disruptive to Earth life. So that's our end goal. From now until possible orbital shifts because of Andromeda, the collision with Andromeda. That's our end date. Okay. Between now and that date, what will we see, and what will actually be there? Assume C is infinite. We can do wormholes, if you wish, travel without astrally, and take our bodies with us. That we can bop, which is the same thing as a wormhole, except it's using some power that we have that we don't know we have, or we evolve into it. Science fiction it's talked about, so let's assume humans can do it too. As far as whether that plane exists, yeah, if there's no such plane, then it doesn't matter. And if reincarnation exists, okay, we'll keep reincarnating. As we reincarnate, what will we see? So let's talk about, use reincarnation as a baseline. And use use the Lazarus Long baseline, somebody doesn't die. Okay, so we've got timelines, we've got space lines. So what do we see? What do we? There's you can make a cone of possibility in each direction. Like in a certain number of years, there will be a point where Earth will be in relation to everything, anything. So look at the cone from right now. Two cones. One, from what we see, what happens when that cone closes? That fixed point in time. It's what we see. Well, what will we see? And then what's actually there? Assuming C is instant rather than a constant, that C is infinite, which is what we used to assume. Okay, right now, the axis of the Earth is irrelevant. The ecliptic, you can say that's relevant, or even just the orbit of Sol, which is the sun. Okay, go up from Sol, down from Sol. Give us I don't know, 23.5 degrees margin. Okay, in a 23.5 degree cone, it's half of 45. So instead of this way, it's like that way. In a 23.5 degree cone, what's there? Like right now, above Earth, or above the orbit of Sol, above and below. What's there? From both in terms of what we see and what's actually there. And then what will be there both sides, or when till we get to that cone, to the point of the cone. What will pass our way in that period of time? Make that model. That'll be interesting. It's much more interesting than the models we have. Okay. Do that with the path too. In a, the Earth will be in a path. Of through the galaxy. So, in that path through the galaxy, what in a 23 and a half degree cone, or 22 and a half, excuse me, 22 and a half degree cone. In a 22 and a half degree cone, rather dispersion, until Andromeda hits the Milky Way in a reasonable such to the extent that we're knocked out, that Sol is knocked free of its usual path. So until Andromeda upsets our path within the galaxy, changes our path through the galaxy, what do we see? And what's actually there? Yeah, it's both on our path and above and below. Yeah, and what's behind us? So however many light years you want to use as a bubble, maybe make the bubble. Well, make the bubble that time. That space time. So in the space time between now and the hitting of Andromeda, or Andromeda throwing the orbit out, make that the bubble. You can even make it a total bubble, all degrees. In that bubble, what's going to be there, both from our views and the reality of it all. So at the speed of light and at infinite. So, yeah, because and another bubble. Assume we can accelerate at 1g, and we stop our acceleration at half c. And then travel at half the speed of light until we get someplace. Until we get to the point where we have to then decelerate at 1g. So assume we accelerate to 1/2 c, travel at 1/2 c, and then decelerate again at 1g from 1/2 c. What's at the that's the spaceship parameters for travel. So let's make that another thing too. So if we can travel, we can use some kind of gravitational internal propulsion. Assume it can happen. Don't argue with it whether it can happen. Assume it can happen. Where can we go from now until Andromeda's collision knocks us off the path? And what will we see in that bubble? Seems like a reasonable thing to ask for. Give us the high points.